All right, welcome to Western Civ again. We're picking up here with Julius Caesar, one of the most fascinating people in world history, definitely in Western Civ. Looking at some dates here, we're going to be picking up in the 70s BCE and then taking it to 44 BCE. This is a date you have to know. You've got to know this date, 44 BC. And I bet if you think hard enough, you probably know the reason for this, what's going to end his life. In fact, I bet you know the exact date that it takes place on. Anyone? That's right, the 15th of March, the Ides of March, 44 BC will be his assassination. So you'll need to know that one. Kind of a good place marker in time. Looking at Julius Caesar, fascinating individual. What we know about him is that his personality is such that men adore him. Men flock to him. He's the life of the party. Men want to be him, and he's also quite the ladies' man. Ladies want to be with him, and he will make his way around the bedrooms of Rome. We also know that he's very vain. He is going bald, and he would comb his hair to the front, this very famous Julius Caesar hairstyle of combing his hair forward over his bald spot. So a fascinating guy. Let's look at the guy. There's some interesting questions to ask about him. First question is he a military dictator? And the answer to that question is yes, he is. He will follow the line of Marius, Sulla. So he's not the first of them. He's following an example that's already been set. Is he a king? Is he an emperor? And the answer to this question is no, neither of those. He will not be a king, and he will not be an emperor. Rome at this time is not an empire. But it does come up, something really important. A crown will make its appearance. In fact, it'll be brought out 3 times to him when he achieves power. 3 times a crown will be brought to him, and he will refuse it 3 times. Now, if you like Julius Caesar, if you're a big supporter, you would say, look, he never wanted to be king. He refused a crown. If you don't like Julius Caesar, and there are going to be people who don't like him, in fact, they're going to kill him, you would argue that, see, the fact that he brought a crown out 3 times, that this was staged. Caesar stages things. He's almost a modern politician in this way. What he does is staged, and he would have staged this crown being brought out to kind of gauge the crowd's response of, do we want a king? And if the answer would have been yes, he would have maybe taken the crown. So it's really up in the air. We don't really know the answer to it. And then it's for this reason here that the assassins will claim that he was going to be a king, and that's why they assassinate him on the Ides of March in 44 BC. So let's go back and look at the situation of this man. He's coming up in this time of troubles. Rome is a republic, but it's really having trouble. It's coming off the tracks here. And looking at our times, about 133 BC, we really start seeing the trouble come. Rome falls into these civil wars, Romans killing Romans. We've got the Gracchus brothers supporting the class that wants their farms back, and the Senate there's blood in the street. Again, senators versus the common man. Among these in there, you've got slave revolts, a whole bunch of them, the most famous led by Spartacus. And then you've got the military dictators, that this seems to be the answer as Rome is coming apart at the hinges. Well, we need a strong man. And you've got 2 of them already, Marius and then Sulla, and those guys ended up fighting each other in a civil war. So it's just a really bad time. Something's got to happen here. A couple of guys come up with a solution, maybe something else besides a military dictator, a possible solution. They come up with the idea of a triumvirate, 3 men working together. Now, not creating like a new position, but among the senators, if 3 men can get together and get all their supporters together, it would be enough to carry the Senate. It would be enough to control the Senate, these 3 men and their supporters. So that's the idea here. Leading the triumvirate is going to be a guy named Crassus, the richest man in Rome. And then Pompey the great military man of Rome. And then as a third wheel comes Julius Caesar. He's known for his political abilities. Again, men like him, women like him, so he'll be kind of the glue to hold everything together. And they establish this. They meet and establish a first triumvirate. Originally, they keep it secret, but it'll come out that these 3 guys are running Rome. from 59 BC. Let's take a look at them. You've got Crassus, the richest man, so we don't need to worry about money. Crassus can just fund everything we need. Pompey, the legions are behind him. He's earned military fame all over the Mediterranean Sea. And then Julius Caesar, the glue again, the man to pull everyone together, to go through and smooth everyone over and get everybody on track. Julius Caesar and his followers from one of the great families of Rome. So, this is all about controlling Rome's empire. Look at the word empire there. We don't have an empire. This is a republic. The government is a republic, but when you look at it on a map, it's looking a lot like an empire. And in fact, you kind of know that we're heading toward an emperor, but we don't have it at this time. You've got a government trying to control an empire, a government that's basically set up to run a city, trying to control an empire. So this is what they decide to do, is that Crassus will take charge of part of the holdings of Rome, part of the empire. He selects Greece and Asia Minor. Romans love the Greeks over there, so he's going to go over to Greece, Asia Minor. There's a lot of wealth over there in the old world. Pompey will head to the west, taking the old Carthaginian empire. He'll be taking over control of Spain and North Africa. And this leaves Caesar with, what's left? To the north of Italy, the Alps and Gaul. Not the prize piece of the puzzle here. Let's take a look at the map, and you look at Rome's holdings here. There's Italy, right there, there's Rome, and Crassus will take the old world. Pompey will go take the Carthaginian world, and then Caesar will head up into the wilds of Europe. Well, what we know about Caesar is that he is a guy who's not going to be satisfied just being a third wheel. He's going to want the glory. He's going to want the wealth. He wants to have the wealth of Crassus. He wants to have the military glory of Pompey, and he sets off to do this. At about the age of 40, he is going to decide, I'm going to go fight someone. He will create legions. Caesar never had much military experience up to this point. All Romans had some military experience, but he is just going to decide, I can do this. I can lead armies. He will create legions and lead them up into the Alps, into the empire. This will be his great adventure as he leaves Rome, heading up into the Alps, where he begins to meet some Germans. This is the first edge, the first wave of a German migration. Now, looking 400 years in the future, we know that Rome is going to fall because of this Roman invasion. This is just the first Germans coming into the Roman holdings. These initial Germans are seeking asylum. There's some meaner Germans behind them pushing these Germans ahead. So these first Germans ask for asylum, and Caesar attacks them. He's not there to make friends. He's there for military glory. And he will drive these Germans back to the east, back across the Rhine River. And this Rhine River, you'll need to know about it. It will be the border of the Germans and the Romans. The Germans to the east and the Roman holdings to the west. So this sets the trend as he's proceeding up into the Alps to the Rhine River, driving the Germans this way as he's securing land to the west. And of course, he's making a lot of captives and making a lot of money off of slavery. This is Caesar's great adventure. That's what he's all about. He wants to achieve glory. He wants to do things that no other Roman has done. So all the Romans will talk about him. So he goes up and he secures the Rhine River, driving the Germans back to the east. And then to the west of him are the Gauls. There are people there to the west. They're the Gauls. I mean, Rome's great enemy since hundreds of years before. Well, how do you handle these Gauls? You're a minority. You're outnumbered by these Gauls. Well, you pacify them. You make treaties with them, and Caesar is a master at this. He's got that personality. So for some of them, he'll make treaties, be very nice to them. And then for other Gallic tribes, you kind of turn them on each other. This is the process called divide and conquer. The Romans are masters at this. When confronted by a majority of people that outnumber you, you make friends with some and turn them against the others. Divide and conquer. Make sure they don't all turn on you. So for the Gauls, he will handle them tribe by tribe, but they're not united. Again, you might be saying to yourself, well, gee, why don't the Gauls unite? Well, they don't really have the understanding yet that they need to stop the Romans. So right now he's handling Gallic tribe versus Gallic tribe as he's up into the land of the Gauls. It's at this time that some of the Gauls begin telling him of a mysterious island to the north, an island of people called Britons. off the edge of the world, this mysterious island shrouded in fog, where the people, here's a description, here's actually a Roman drawing of the people. They seem to be naked, and the description of the Romans is that they painted themselves blue and drew pictures on themselves. Sometimes they'll actually be called Picts, the word picture, because of the pictures they drew on them, and they paint themselves blue. Well, you got to find out about this. You've got to go over and find out about this island. So he will lead an expedition to find out about this island, some place that no Roman's ever been before. So in 55 BC, he will put his army on boats and take them over across the channel. Can't call it the English Channel yet because we haven't called it England. This is a land called Britain, where the people are Britons. And his first landing over there is a failure. The Britons meet him on the beaches and will drive him back to the boats. These wild Britons on the island driving the Romans off. Well, you going to let this go? No. Caesar will regroup back in Gaul in next year, 54 BC, with a much larger expedition this time, more boats landing. And this time, even prefab forts. They will build forts over in Gaul that come apart piece by piece, load them on the boats, and then hit the beaches in Britain and set these forts up, kind of a D-Day in reverse. So, what's this all about? What is Caesar doing here? He's invading this island that, what is it for? Well, we seem to think that his motivation, again, is military glory. He wants what Crassus has. He wants money from this. He wants to enslave people. He wants military glory. He wants to defeat people that haven't been defeated before. He is sending reports back to Rome, and this kind of shows us his motivation. Why is he doing this, Why is he, basically he's his own newspaper reporter. He's an embedded reporter writing his own stories. He sends his reports. In his reports, he refers to himself in the third person, and psychologists have said, well, he's an egomaniac. Well, what he's doing is he's writing it as if he's a reporter. He refers to himself as Caesar did this and Caesar did that. They've been collected now, and you can actually see them in book form, what are called commentaries on the war in Gaul, his collected writings, his collected reports of his wars in Gaul and in Britain, against the Britons. And so in book form, we call them Caesar's Commentaries, the war in Gaul. They are great, thrilling stories. He's a great writer, and he's writing for a purpose. He's writing to thrill you. And he writes in simple Latin. Now, he's a very educated man, very well off, patrician Roman. Why is he writing so simply? Because he wants the common man to read it. That's who he's writing to. He's not writing to fellow senators. He's not writing to some judicial committee. He's writing for the common man. These would be read in the town square. A town crier would every morning read the news from Gaul or from Britain. And this makes him very popular. I mean, this would be the equivalent of you watching a TV show every week, or back in the olden days, listen to a radio show or a serial in the newspapers. You'd become fascinated with this. And again, the common man, a lot of them would have a relative maybe serving in these legions. And so every day you're getting reports back. What's happening with the legions, Caesar's legions? Well, despite Caesar's best plans to thrill the audience back in Rome, turns out that while he's messing around in Britain, there's an uprising of the Gauls. They have found a leader who unites them, a leader by the name of Vercingetorix or Vercingetorix. I won't hold you responsible for the spelling or the pronunciation. Let's just call him the VX guy. If you get a chance to go to France, you'll see statues of him. He will become France's first great national hero who unites the Gauls together to fight the Romans. And sadly, spoiler alert, he's going to be a loser. He's going to get killed. So France's first great hero is not going to work out for him. But Caesar's going to fight some great battles against Vercingetorix. He had to come back from Britain, get his legions back together, get some of the Gauls on his side as best he can, and fight against Vercingetorix and the rest of the Gauls. So we get some epic battles. And again, we get all the reports, all the details of this great war that goes on between Caesar and the Gauls. And what you see in his commentaries, it's a boon for us as historians because we don't have anything else about this. The daily life of Roman soldiers, and what it's like, what are legions, how do they move, how do they camp, how do they get up in the morning, how do they fight in battle, blow by blow, move by move of Roman legions. And it seems to be pretty correct. Again, some people question, well, Caesar making this up? Well, the day-to-day stuff, he can't make this up. I mean, he's writing for people who are going to be heading back to Rome someday, so they can't make up too much of it. I mean, he can embellish a little bit. But the blow-by-blow stuff's got to be pretty correct. And then it's epic life and death situations. I mean, he's a great commander, but he's in trouble here. He's outnumbered by these Gauls, and he's fighting for his life, and his men are fighting for their lives. Finally, we get a last battle here in the year 52 BC. Caesar and Vercingetorix, after fighting all over Gaul, they finally meet at a place called Alesia. In fact, Caesar has been pushing the Gauls. He's got them to retreat back to a hilltop fort where they appear to be trapped. So in other words, this should be the end. Caesar's got his enemy trapped on a hilltop. There's not much water up there. And Caesar will begin to siege them. This will be the siege of Alesia. On this hilltop here are the Gauls in their little fort up there. And Caesar will surround them and will set his legions to doing what legions do, building things. They build Romes, they build forts. And in this case, they're going to build siege walls, as described in the commentaries, about 11 miles long around this fort here. And historians are like, this can't be true. You can't do that. You can't sit there and build an 11-mile fortification wall while your enemy just sits there. Well, there's a reason what's happening here as Caesar's legions are surrounding Vercingetorix. Vercingetorix, it turns out, is trying to trap Caesar. That this is a trap within a trap. That another army of Gauls is coming to the rescue, coming to Vercingetorix's rescue. So Caesar is going to be trying to trap some Gauls as they're trapping him on the outside. So here's some Gauls here. Caesar has built a wall around here. More Gauls coming from the outside to attack Caesar's men. Caesar built another wall here, about 13 miles long, holding these Gauls out. And of course, historians look at this. This is crazy. There's no way this could have happened like this. And I was watching a show on the History Channel recently, History Mysteries or something like that, and they were showing historians evaluating this and using satellite data, getting satellites to come look at this from space. And yes, from space you can still see the post holes, and these post holes here of both walls, the 11-mile wall and the 13-mile wall, the remnants of what was dug into the earth is still there 2,000 years later to prove what Caesar described is correct. One siege of Gauls here, and then Caesar's men being sieged on the outside. Caesar's Romans running around between the walls. Caesar he describes himself in a tower so he can observe these Gauls, and directing his troops in between the walls as they're attacked for day after day. Just unbelievable stuff, really unbelievable stuff, but true. And then finally, Vercingetorix surrenders. His army inside the fort had run out of water, and Vercingetorix surrenders. Here's Caesar accepting the surrender, and of course, no. Caesar will have Vercingetorix taken back to Rome in an iron cage and executed in front of a mob crowd later on. To show you, and again, there's a reason for this, to show you, you've been hearing these stories and these battles that have been going on in Gaul. Well, here he is. Here's the bad guy, and you get to come out and see him be executed in front of everyone. Caesar playing to the crowd. Well, while this is going on, there's a couple of deaths. Crassus dies, and Julia dies. Part of the Triumvirate had been that Caesar's sister had married Pompey, and she died in childbirth. So with these deaths in the year 53 BC, can the Triumvirate survive? One of the wheels is gone, and the other wheels, the axle's broken, and the answer is going to be no. Pompey races back to Rome, takes control of the Senate by himself, and begins to take action against Caesar. Caesar's turn to be consul was due, and it will be reported to Caesar that he will not be allowed to be consul. And there's a committee investigating some of his improprieties that have happened, dealing with the Germans and dealing with the Gauls, and Caesar needs to come back to Rome to answer some charges. So you'll not be made consul, you need to come back to Rome, and just a reminder for you that Roman legions are not allowed near Rome. You must leave your legions and come to Rome alone to answer these charges. This goes back to the days of Marius and Sulla. After Marius and Sulla in the civil wars, they passed a law that legions can't come to Rome. They have to stop at a river, the Rubicon River. Well, what's Caesar going to do? What's your reaction here? You're being called to task. You're going to be called back to Rome without your legions and in humiliation, possibly assassinated. This may be what Pompey has in store, just get rid of his rival. Well, Caesar has to make a decision. You know, you've been planning this for years, your moment of glory, and he makes the decision to march his legions to Rome. And I will remind you, this is really important, that breaks the law, to bring your legions into Rome. And the Romans are very law-abiding people. So he's going to cross the Rubicon River, taking them down toward Rome. This is where we get that famous expression, crossing the Rubicon, making a decision that you can't go back on. Once this decision is made, it's all or nothing. In fact, Caesar has another expression, Shakespeare has it for him, that the die is cast, that he has thrown the die, one die, not two dice, but one die has been cast. He's throwing it to the fate to see if he'll be killed or he'll become great. His great gamble of crossing the Rubicon River. The Rubicon is right about here, just south of Venice. It's a small river, so it wasn't a big deal to cross the river, but it was a line marker. So the great gamble is made, and it is a huge surprise for everyone involved that Caesar would do such a thing. And his legions march down to Rome. They're welcomed by crowds surging out. I mean, they know who Caesar is now. They know what he's been doing. And they welcome him in the streets, and he makes it all the way to Rome. And Pompey and the senators decide to run for their lives. Because they could be the marked men now. Caesar shows mercy. This is what makes this really interesting. Marius, during the time of Marius and Sulla, there just would have been a mass execution. Caesar, if you remember also, Caesar had been spared. Sulla had spared Caesar. And so Caesar now shows mercy to his enemies. He orders no reign of terror. I'm not going to hunt down these people who are possibly planning my assassination. There will be no reign of terror. We can all work together. There needs to be a political unity here for the good of Rome. He doesn't want political factions. He doesn't want a Caesar party versus a Pompey party and a reign of terror. He tries to actually contact Pompey, but to no success. So if you're a Caesar fan, there's part of your liking of him. And if you're a Pompey fan, you say, well, this is all part of a game. What you end up with is another civil war, Pompey's legions versus Caesar's legions. And if you were a betting man, you'd be betting on Pompey. Pompey is a great commander. He's called Pompey the Great. Caesar, kind of a young upstart, actually an old upstart. Pompey will retreat out of Italy, head over to Macedonia. You might notice a trend here that when Roman armies begin to fight, don't want to fighting in Italy anymore, so they'll kind of head over to Greece and fight over there. Caesar will chase him over there, and they meet in 48 BC at a battle called Pharsalus over in Macedonia. And Caesar wins. In a really tough battle, Caesar proves it. He is a great commander. Part of it's just his personal magnetism. Part of it is the fact that Pompey's old now and kind of grumpy and doesn't really have the attraction anymore. Pompey will lose the battle, and he will eventually make it over to Egypt, fleeing, and Caesar chases. This is where we bring Egypt into this. It's quite fascinating to bring Egypt into all this. What's the situation in Egypt? Egypt is an independent state at this time, still under the Ptolemies, still under those Greek rulers since the days of Ptolemy, since the days of Alexander the Great, under Greek rule. So the Egyptians, they don't want Roman interference, and when Pompey shows up there, they kill him. And when Caesar shows up, they offer Caesar the body, and Caesar was quite angry that these Egyptians would have the gall to kill a Roman, a great Roman. You know, he's Caesar's enemy, but he's still a Roman. And so Caesar decides to hang out there in Egypt with his legions. And that's where he meets Cleopatra. Cleopatra comes to him, and the stories abound of how she got to him. But she makes her way to him and tells her story. Her story is that she is a princess, but she is under the rule of her brother or stepbrother who is mentally handicapped. Again, the Ptolemies kind of continued that Egyptian trend of marrying really close inside the family, and so he's mentally incapable of ruling, and she asked for Caesar's help to help remove the government so that she can rule Egypt. They make an alliance here, an alliance between Caesar and Cleopatra. Now here's the alliance that's really important, because they both get something out of this. By the way, there will be sex and possibly love, and actually there's a child involved here. Cleopatra will have a child from Caesar. Here's what Caesar wants. Caesar will guarantee that Egypt is independent. He will give her independence. She will give food to Rome. This is what Caesar wants. He's recognized that Rome has become a huge, massive city, and whoever can control the population can control the government. And if you can supply free food to Rome, that would ease a lot of problems in the government. By the way, if you're wondering about Cleopatra, what she looked like, she's about 18 years old here. We don't really know what she looks like, whether she was beautiful or what. Caesar isn't really captive of her. He's using her as much as she's using him. So we're not really sure what she looked like or what color her skin was. Here's a statue from probably 100 years later, so that might be close. Back in my day, we had a movie called Cleopatra where Elizabeth Taylor starred as Cleopatra. And, quite beautiful woman there, and everyone's captivated by that movie. Lately, if you watch movies about Cleopatra, she'll have much darker skin. Well, we really don't know what color her skin was. Definitely Greek, though. She's definitely of Greek descent. So, Caesar now with his new girl, not his wife, he did not marry her, but his new girl and his new son, they returned to Rome. The year's 45 BC. By the way, he dies in 44 BC. I mean, he doesn't know that, but you know that. So he doesn't have long to go here. He doesn't have long to do much. So Caesar begins activating his plans. What are they? What is he planning on doing? Well, first thing he'll do is he will become tribune. So he will play to the plebeians, and they will make him a tribune, so he can control the Senate that way. And he sets off spending the money of Rome on public works. Things like roads to help the population, things like aqueducts, bringing more fresh water to Rome, and of course the food, from Egypt. The problems persist, though. He is not going to have the free run of everything. There are a lot of senators, remember he didn't kill them all. There are a lot of senators who are still there and are not working with him. Caesar's response to this is to just go around them. He will do something called packing the Senate. The Senate was 300 people when he's there, so you need 150 votes, right? 151 votes to pass something. What he'll do is he'll just add 600 people, 600 of his own people to the Senate, including men from around the empire, non-Romans, and we'll make it up to 900. So he now needs, 451 votes? I think he shouldn't have a problem getting 451 votes since he just added 600 people. So he'll just overrun the Senate. And of course, they're not real happy with that. If you're a senator, that was once a powerful position. Now a senator's not that powerful. And he continues to insult the Senate. This doesn't stop there. He just continues insulting the Senate. It's like, he's missing something politically here. With his senators in there, they will name him dictator for life. And he will begin naming consuls. Again, it's a very prestigious post, and he will begin naming them not just 1 and 2, but 5 years in advance. He will name the next 10 consuls, and of course, these are all his people. When the Senate does meet, he will refuse to stand for them. In fact, he will be seated before them on a golden throne. Again, that sounds a lot like something a king would do or an emperor would do. He will go further. He'll have a month added to the calendar. He'll have the days restructured and adding a month with his name on it. What month might that be? That's the month of July. He will add a new month to the calendar. And then they were quite shocked when they look up and see the statues of the gods, and Caesar's statue is among those of the gods. He has deified himself. He is making himself godlike. Wow. And then at public meetings, 3 in a row, a crown will be brought out, and he will refuse it. After judging the crowd, he will refuse it 3 times. And that's pretty much what's going to get the conspiracy really rolling. All the insults and a crown being brought out with a golden throne. In 44 BC, the conspirators really begin to take action. It's led by a group of about 60, and these are not just the old senators. This is what makes this unique. If it was just 60 of the old angry senators, that'd be one thing. But it's a group of senators. Some of them are the old ones, and some of them even are the new ones, the ones that Caesar had appointed. The leader is a guy named Cassius, but the big moment occurs when a guy named Brutus joins the group. Brutus was Caesar's adopted son. Caesar, with his legitimate wife, and had actually a couple of wives after each other, had no sons. He did have a daughter, but no sons, and except by Cleopatra. And Brutus will be his adopted son. And now Brutus is showing up with the conspirators saying, I'm in. Wow. That's throwing your inheritance away. That's saying, I don't want Caesar's inheritance. I want him dead. Wow. The date they pick is the Ides of March. If you watch Shakespeare's play, you know, he's got the fortune teller out there saying, beware the Ides of March. There's probably some truth to that. Caesar's no dummy. He probably did get a tip from somebody saying, hey, beware the Ides of March. You know, something's going down. But what do? Do you have these senators just knocked off? I mean, he's deified himself. And here's what his reaction to this is: in his arrogance, he's God now. In his arrogance, he actually goes to the Senate on the Ides of March, believing nothing can happen to him. How dare they? No one would dare strike me. And he does bring a bodyguard. Mark Antony, one of his top generals, will be there to provide the muscle. But Mark Antony gets distracted, and the senators will take him down, stabbing him with daggers in the Senate, right below the statue of Pompey. And Brutus was there also. So it's quite the moment, the assassination of Caesar. And that's the question: good guy or bad guy? Should he have been killed? Should he have been handled some other way? We'll never know. Was he a good guy or was he a bad guy? Did the senators do right or not? That's the big question. And the irony, of course, the irony of the situation is that if you assassinated Caesar fearing that he was becoming too powerful, what's going to happen next is beyond anything you could have thought. This is the great irony of killing somebody and having it backfire on you, because what they're going to end up with is a true emperor, not just a king, but make the next step all the way to emperor next.